Weapon technology shaped the course of human history. Some of the most awesome designs are hundreds, even thousands of years old. But now, the most deadly weapons of all time are getting a makeover as modern technology puts a new spin on the ancient past.
Oh my.
Chad Houseneck leads the way.
I want one, I want one. No, I want two.
1 part engineer.
I think I can do that.
And 2 parts mad scientist. He'll get a helping hand from Mike Lodes, a man who knows a thing or two about history.
This is the world's first flamethrower. Wow.
And what gives these weapons their edge. There are swords, and then there's this, the samurai sword. Centuries of craftsmanship and mystique have made this weapon into an Eastern icon. But can modern technology make a sword that's sharper, stronger, better?
The katana, the sword of the samurai, arguably the most iconic of weapons. More than just a sword, to many this is the quintessential sword. Not just a weapon, but a spiritual symbol, and still regarded with great reverence in Japan. But is it actually any better as a sword? Or is all the mystique really just that? But I'm sure Chad is going to need some convincing. Chad, good morning.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What you got there?
We have a samurai sword.
Yes, you do.
This is, so people will tell you, the best sword in the world, the iconic sword. The hardest possible cutting edge, the perfect blade design, the best quality steel.
Blah, blah. It's a big fancy knife, Mike.
You have a knife?
I have a knife.
There is a difference between a sword and a knife. Well, clearly there's a size difference.
Well, yeah.
But that has consequences. Because this is shorter, it can afford to have a harder steel just to get the edge. Because this needs to be able to bend and return to shape.
It's sharp.
Not bad for a replica.
It's a nice day. Let's go out back, see if we can cut some other stuff up.
So Mike's about to give me a quick demonstration of just a few of the techniques employed by those who choose to live by the way of the sword.
So if you give me that and I give you this, and I want you to swing that at my neck as hard as you can.
What, just swing it at you?
What I've done is I've deflected that blow enough, but my sword is absolutely on you.
Yeah, but what if I was to get this?
Well, that's a really good idea, because they used staff weapons a lot. So you come swinging down at my head with that big, big overhead swing.
Like chief of staff?
Yeah, around there, and then I'm just round and got you. So, but they're more likely to jab at you. Whole line of people. Do you do a big, deep jab at my face? I can use that to deflect, and you've lost the advantage of length, and I'm in. That's the versatility of the sword, as long as it's strong enough to make those things. But the other thing it needs to do, the only time that edge will come in peril, is when you're striking. Say you're striking someone up. You swing that down at my head as hard as you like. Really go for it. In that situation, that's the equivalent of it hitting armor coming into my head. So that edge, brittle though it is going to take some contact as well. So do you think you're going to be able to improve on thousands of years of tradition?
Well, you know, I think we figured out how to improve on just about everything else in those thousands of years, so I can't imagine why sword making would be any different.
Are you going to go with steel?
As opposed to?
As opposed to carbon fiber or some other
tapioca,
fancy modern material?
I can't imagine it would be anything other than steel.
It's got to have the weight and those multiple properties.
It's going to be steel.
And you can improve on that.
I can certainly try.
Knock it off! Bite your other leg off! See what I have to put up with around here? Got to build a sword, samurai sword. What exactly are the properties that a sword needs to possess in order to cut off a pit bull's leg? Well, it's got to be pretty tough, so it can take being, you know, bandied about in a sword fight. But at the same time, it's got to have that razor sharp edge so you can slice your opponent into tiny little bits. 2 pieces of steel. Look at that. 1 piece of steel, we cut the other. Well, how is this possible? This piece of steel is incredibly tough. Look at this. beating on it with a hammer, and all it does is bend. That's pretty tough. Drill bit, incredibly sharp. Just cut this piece of steel. Hit it once, it breaks. My challenge is to get both of those properties in one piece of material.
When you're building knives of any size, you've only got one choice of materials. It's gonna be steel. But I've learned that in order to get where you're going, it sorta kinda helps to know where you're coming from. And pursuant to that, a field trip is in order. I'm thinking Japan.
But where to start?
All
All right, there seems to be some confusion about A, where we are, and B, where we're trying to go. So we're missing two of the recipes, two of the ingredients for the recipe for success. Success!
12 million people in Tokyo, and it looks to me like about half of them are in this intersection. Amazingly ordered, really.
But there's another Japan that is just the complete opposite of this, just deeply embedded with tradition. And I think one of the reasons is that period of seclusion they had, 1641 to 1853, all foreigners banned, shut out from the country.
During this period, the samurai dominated society as the warrior class. Modern martial arts continue the tradition of rigorous training that prepared the samurai for battle. In this ancient dojo in the back streets of Tokyo, they practice kendo, the way of the sword. With protective armor and bamboo swords, no one is going to get hurt, but they use it to sharpen reaction speeds and improve their instinctive responses. But nothing is more important to the Japanese swordsman than perfect technique and form. To train for this, they use real swords in choreographed sequences.
You're learning the forms, the muscle memory.
So in the heat of battle, you don't need your mind. You only need
no time for a mind.
Right, you've trained your mind is in your nervous system from here to here, not from here to here.
Exactly.
Wow.
Learned responses.
And then there is tameshigiri. This is the art of cutting. They use rolled straw mats to test the sharpness of the sword and to perfect their techniques. Today we're with Sensei Hayashi Kunishiro. He is well known as the master of tameshigiri. He spent a lifetime practicing the technique and teaching the form to top actors of Japanese martial arts movies. However, we've managed to persuade him to let us try. And that's a rare privilege to be granted to Westerners.
でもよかった先生。教えとこれですか？はいはい。I asked if I can have a go.
このぐらいいっぱい持って、それから2本か3本。
はい。Very, very sharp. And this is not only to test the cutting power of the man, but this is the test for the sword.
I saw these laying by the door and I wondered what they were for. I'm thinking this is a rather blunt sort of
instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder where you
think. That's the proof.
That's the proof, and it gives a consistent density, so it's a good way to test a sword. I mean, look at that niku. That's the blade profile, that shape. It's really important for cutting. Look at how clean that cuts.
That is quite amazing.
It's really, and that's, quite a surface area that's getting through. You need to find out how these are made.
I would love to.
How they're made properly, traditionally. But you should find out by going to see the man, the expert.
Can you set it up?
I can set it up. I'm going to leave you, though, because
okay.
I'm going to find out the other secret of the katana, which is the tamahagami.
While leaving Chad to his own devices, I've come to meet up with Paul Martin, a former British Museum curator. He moved to Japan to immerse himself in the world of the samurai sword.
So if I were to ask you, what do you actually defines the Japanese sword, the katana? What's the qualities?
Well, a good sword should not bend, should not break, and should cut well. Yeah. Right. The Japanese sword has all of these attributes, but it's much more powerful than a mere weapon. It's a spiritual icon. It's a beautiful art object. It's a symbol of the Japanese nation.
But what is so special about it? Well, one thing is the materials it's made from. High in the mountains, 6 hours from Tokyo, iron in the form of a black sand is collected from the riverbeds and is smelted with charcoal to form a unique kind of steel, tamahagami. And a Japanese sword is not considered authentic unless it is made from this. Tamahagami is produced only once a year. They create a 2-ton block of it, and it is only made available to the elite swordsmiths. But to the Japanese, the importance of the katana is so much more than this mystic metal. They believe that a warrior's soul lives in his sword. And from the very outset, every process is carried out with ritual. The tamahagami is created in a purpose-built structure called a tatara.
This is astonishing, isn't it?
It's an amazing place.
What exactly is going on in here?
Every 20 to 30 minutes, they're putting in large amounts of sand iron and charcoal. And this goes on regularly for 72 hours.
72 hours?
Yeah.
That's astonishing. And it's always attended?
Always attended.
And presumably the reason for that is because they want the iron sand to absorb the carbon to make that alloy, which is steel. It strikes me that it looks like an altar. But the whole atmosphere in here, from everybody, the spectators and the workers, is very reverential, very religious.
Yeah, it is definitely a spiritual place.
The real payoff is going to happen very early tomorrow morning when those walls bulge and it gives birth to the tamahagami. And so I'm going to get some sleep and come back bright and early.
Finding the train was easy once I found the train station. On the way to Okayama to see what the Japanese have to say about sword making.
Meanwhile, I'm back at 5 in the morning to witness the final steps of this ancient ritual. The specialized steel has been smelting in the furnace for 3 days now. At last, the men start to break down the clay walls. Inside is the block of tamahagami, the molten metal that Japanese swordsmiths have relied on for centuries.
Inside there is the tamahagami, this unique material that makes the unique sword, the katana. So they're now raking the charcoal off the top layer. The heat is unbelievable. If you think you felt the heat from a fire, from a coal fire or wood fire, heat of molten metal is scorching the face.
As day breaks, the final coals are raked away to reveal a solidified mass of metal. And at the core of this cocoon is the pure tamahagami. And now it is time for a prayer to the gods, thanking them for the success of this year's tamahagami. And then there is celebration.
Boy, that's good. After all that heat and all this drama, that's just what's needed. So here it is, it's out in the light of day. It's been such a huge privilege and pleasure to be here. It's been an amazing atmosphere creating this thing. They only do 2 of these a year, sometimes 3. And from those, all the traditional sword production is done. The steel comes from nowhere else, just 2 or 3 of these blocks a year.
Having made his way down from the mountains, Paul Martin caught up with me in Okayama. And he has graciously agreed to exercise some of his hard-earned cachet and introduce me into a tightly closed circle of elite Japanese swordsmiths, who are still using the techniques perfected by their ancestors and passed along through the generations. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Master Ono Yoshimitsu. Our blade begins life as a rough, coarse piece of metal, which was produced in the very same foundry by the very same process that Mike has just witnessed.
That's full of impurities right now? I mean, it looks like it's...
It's very pure. It's 99% pure steel.
A Japanese sword is made by wrapping a hard yet brittle U-shaped layer of steel around a softer but much tougher inner core. The hard steel will take and hold a razor edge, but would shatter like glass without the support of the softer steel. Raw Tamahagony is broken down into small chunks, which are then beaten into flat plates. And these flat plates are used to sort hard from soft. But just exactly how are the properties of each plate judged?
What doesn't break cleanly becomes the core steel. And what breaks cleanly is the outer steel.
Right, because this is harder because it shatters.
Yeah.
Right, like a glass would shatter. Okay. Okay, so it's really a selection process.
So here we are, smashing steel chunks to bits, sorting as we go. If it shatters, it will become the hard cutting edge. And if it bends and tears, we'll use it to form the tough inner core. Once having sorted all our plates, we are now ready to forge weld them together. So we take all the itsy bitsy bits and we stack them up like pieces of a 3D puzzle. Heated to the proper temperature, steel can be mechanically formed without risking damage to its molecular microstructure.
So you can see he's making an incision here.
By folding it back on itself, you are essentially kneading steel dough. You see, what you want is all your ingredients, be they eggs and flour or carbon and iron, evenly dispersed. Happily, the byproduct of this mixing process is that you are squeezing out entrapped air pockets and driving impurities to the surface.
He said, would you like to have a go?
Yeah? It's okay? Wow. Thank you.
Pump it a little bit harder and then turn the steel over. When the flames begin, they're a very blue colour. And then as we near the optimum temperature, they become very yellow. No straw. Straight in, hammer it out a bit more to about 1 centimetre. All right.
Okay.
Okay, put the chisel in. It's right down by your right.
Ready?
Yep. Yep.
Ono-san makes it look easy. But let me tell you, that power hammer requires a good deal of finesse.
What does the Japanese board game Go? A minute to learn and a lifetime to master. Although this is obviously more than a minute to learn, it's quite evidently a lifetime to master. I mean, he doesn't have little thermometers, you know, he can't stick his infrared. You know, I brought my little digigauge here. Turn around, Paul, we can see all these people. Hi, this is our sound man. He's been absolutely excellent. But, you know, look, he's got all his little gadgets that he brings to the job with him, right? You know? The series producer, he's got his gadgets he brings to the job with him. Nice watch, by the way. I've never learned to properly judge a steel's temperature by gauging its color. I understand it, but I don't know it because I'm trained, you know, with a calculator. I mean, and he does it all with his eye.
Now we've got two different blends of steel, both beaten into submission and folded to perfection. And pretty soon here, it's gonna start to look an awful lot like a sword. The hard steel is to be made into a jacket, which will become the cutting edge, and the softer steel will become the inner core.
These two pieces will now be welded together, forge welded under intense heat and pressure from the hammer into one. And then we'll begin the process of drawing the blade out. And now is when it's really going to begin to take the shape of a Japanese sword.
Well, now it might look like a sword, but a sword it ain't. Until it's been heat treated, it's just another hunk of steel. And now stick close here because the devil's in the details. The process begins with a mixture of watery clay applied to the back half of the blade. And this will slow down the rapid cooling effects that it will go through when plunged into the quench tank. In the end, you'll actually be able to see a wavy transition between the soft and hard steels, and this is known as the hamon, which translates literally as the badge of the blade.
The moment of truth is upon us. We've turned off all the lights and we've waited till dusk because what we want to see is the color of the steel, and the way Ono-san will judge the temperature is not with a thermometer, it's not by feeling the heat, it's by looking at it. Look at this. You can see the line of the clay where he's applied the clay. So you will see that that is going to be the exact spot where the hamon comes up. That is amazing.
Okay, the make it or break it moment.
Notice how he went straight in. And look at this. The blade has begun to take on that characteristic curve. Ono-san, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm humbled. Okay, thank you.
Japan has all the hallmarks of an ultra-modern society, but it still holds the secrets of an age-old weapon, the samurai sword. It's a weapon that dates back over 1,000 years. But why does it have such a powerful hold on our imaginations? What makes it so very special? Well, in Japan's ancient society, the samurai were the warrior class, admired, respected, and feared. They established a legacy of supreme sword-fighting skills that have been passed down through the ages. But the sword wasn't always the samurai's weapon of choice. At first, they used to rely more on the horse and the bow.
This is called yabusame. It's still practiced as a sacred rite in Japan today. Mounted archers were highly effective, and in the early battles of the samurai, the warriors distinguished themselves by their prowess with the bow. But they also carried the sword, which they used to great effect when closing with the enemy.
But the importance of the sword increased gradually, and one of the reasons for that was the introduction of firepower.
In 1543, the Portuguese introduced the arquebus to Japan. And it resulted in even more infantry warfare and a greater reliance on the katana.
Back in the U.S., back in the U.S., back in the good old U.S. of A. Don't get me wrong, Japan was great. I had a wonderful time, and Ono-san, what an honor. Truly a master craftsman. But honestly, it's a bit old school for this modern boy.
And so, I'm looking into modern materials. We're still dealing with steel, but there are a lot of different choices. Alloying elements, varying amounts of carbon, all can make a big difference.
Check this out. Look at that. Chips are flying off of that. Hundreds of degrees. Challenge is, how do I take something this hard, this sharp, this tough, this keen, and stretch it into something as long as a samurai sword? And for that, I'm gonna need a little bit of help. I'm just the guy.
If Des Moines, Iowa sounds like an unlikely destination to go and find a master swordsmith, well, it might well be.
Well, as I was saying, I'm on my way to see Howard Clark, who is considered to be one of the best sword makers in America today.
Wow. It is cold. Howard, I presume?
I am. You must be Chad.
I'm Chad.
Welcome to the corn patch.
Is this a normal day out here? Is it usually 20 below?
No, it's a little cold.
Is it any warmer inside?
Oh yeah, the heat's on.
All right, so what's the process here? Walk me through this. How are we gonna do this?
Well, we're gonna start with a piece of this 1086 modified steel round bar here.
What 1086, what is that?
It's simple carbon steel with 0.86% carbon.
Now, 1086 is the same steel that lots of tools are made of, so it should be hard enough to hold a razor edge, no problem. But the question is, will it remain tough enough to be as resilient to contact as the Japanese sword? Now, to be fair, one could say that Howard Clark is getting on the train a couple of stops after the Japanese. What the Japanese do is they take a inferior raw material and, coax it up to quality, whereas Howard Clark, he's starting off with a very excellent product right from the start. So here we have the power hammer, which can pound the metal with a force of 400 pounds per square inch. So yes, I suspect that would be a little bit faster than doing it by hand.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna quit there while I'm still ahead. It's not quite perfect, but I think we can fix it with the grinder. If I do any more work with the power hammer and the forge, I think I might as well lose the shape. Not perfect, but pretty good first attempt. I think the master says we're done.
In Japan, everything is done with precision.
And must be performed.
Ono-san hand pounds his blades to a perfect state before passing it on to the polisher. But here in Iowa, we've got an industrial grinder for me to wipe out any mistakes I might have made with that big power hammer.
All right, so one more time here, just to make sure I got this right. We're taking our workpiece and we're normalizing it.
Correct. Multiple times.
It looks pretty normal to me to begin with. What's not normal about it?
After forging, because not all of the blade was heated evenly every time, the grain size will be uneven.
The molecular structure of the blade that we just forged is now all over the place.
That's right.
From all the beating and heating and smacking and jacking and cracking.
Guaranteed there'll be some really big grain in that because we had it really hot. When you were forging, you kept it there long.
So we're going to take the box of cereal and go tuk, 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 shake it all down.
All right, so let me tell you what we're up to here. You see, we're starting out with a very high-quality piece of steel. And after I'm done beating and banging on it with that big power hammer, it's in a pretty sad state, molecularly speaking. So what we've got to do is we've got to do some repair. Right now, we've got our iron, our carbon, our vanadium, and all those other alloying elements all mixed up. And we need to redistribute them so that they're evenly spaced throughout the entire sword. How are we going to do it? First, we're going to bring it up to a scorching 845 degrees, and that's going to set the molecules free to flow wherever they want. And before you know it, super strong. Confused? Excellent. My devious plan begins to transpire.
If we were on the subway, we had a bunch of guys in red hats, and a whole bunch of guys in blue hats, and a couple of guys in white hats. We completely evenly distributed all those people on the train. So if we looked at any one spot, it would be identical to any other spot.
That's the idea.
As opposed to, before we normalized, there'd be a whole bunch of blue hats over here, maybe a couple white hats here, maybe one red one over there. But now, so if we looked at that with a microscope, every spot that we chose, no matter what, would be absolutely identical.
Should be.
Normal. Normalized. I think I got that.
But there is one key difference in the process. Remember, Ono-san created his sword with two different grades of steel, one hard and one soft. Howard Clark uses only one. That's right, he gets his bang with one buck. So what he has to do is, through the heat treating process, achieve the resilience that he needs in the back edge of his blade. And he does this through using a unique quenching process. But the upshot is, it's far more exacting and far more scientific than anything we saw in Japan.
So what are we trying to achieve with the clay here?
We're creating a layer of insulation on the thicker portions of the blade.
To keep the heat out or to keep the heat in?
To keep the heat in. We only have to delay cooling for a few seconds. And all the clay does is keep the back part from hardening.
So we just need to retard the cooling ever so slightly to provide some toughness to the back of the sword.
Yeah.
Because his entire sword is made from cutting-edge grade material, the application of the clay is much more important to Howard Clark. While Ono-san carefully painted on a thin layer of water and charcoal powder, Howard uses a thick, gritty mixture, which holds more heat for a longer period of time.
So what is this? This
is a mixture of dry refractory cement for sticking fire brick together.
Right. Yeah, I got a bunch of that later on.
Finely ground charcoal. Consistency of, running peanut butter.
Did your wife ever come in and borrow this from you? I imagine you make a nice little mud mask.
Got better stuff than this. This is a little bit brutal.
Quite tall enough.
So nothing is done here that is not finely calibrated and calculated with thermostats and calculators. Unlike traditional Japan, we don't carefully judge the color of the blade by eye. We preset the kiln to 845 degrees and wait for the bell.
You let it soak for what, 4 minutes, you said?
4 minutes.
All right, and then?
And then pull it out of the salt and into the water.
A process like this takes the steel right up to its limits and sometimes beyond. Timing is everything. If we're off by as little as just a few seconds, the sword will crack. Well, here goes nothing. Well, this is all very scientific, so I wonder what I'm doing here. But seriously, As I understand it, what happens is that when you really quickly cool the steel down, you freeze it in whatever molecular structure it was at. So, all I know for sure is that it gets really, really hard, really, really fast, and I really, really like it.
Looking good, looking good.
Ha-ha! That's why they call me the master.
Not over yet.
The part of the metal that's under the clay, on the back edge of the blade, will be insulated from the rapid cooling effects of the water. But here's the catch. As the cutting edge cools, it contracts, so it bends the tip of the blade down. But as the temperature in the core and the back slowly catch up, then the whole sword bends up, producing that classic samurai sword curve.
Okay, get it out of there, knock the clay off. No, just put it right in the salt. It'll be okay. There you go. Leave the tip of the tang out over the end of the back. We'll fix that out later.
How'd that do, boss?
Looks good. I didn't feel any ting in the tongs. I think we managed to pull this off with no cracks, which is the major make it or break it question here. It's got a nice organic curve to it. I think it's going to be a pretty sword when you're all done.
So you would put one of your blades up against any sword, any samurai sword made anywhere?
Yeah, pretty much. Anytime, anywhere.
By any method?
Yeah.
All right, I'm truly honored.
Good. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Howard.
I'm still in Japan to witness the final step in the creation of a samurai sword, the polish. It's the ultimate finishing touch. The polish is an essential part of the blade. The finer the polish, the less the drag, the faster and cleaner the cut. I'm with Fujishiro Sensei, a master of the art. Each sword can take up to 2 weeks to bring to a full polish. He uses a series of ever finer polishing stones until he ends up with a paper-thin wafer.
Rubbing there, he can actually feel the grain of the blade. I mean, that's the real art, isn't it?
It doesn't get much closer to perfection than this.
That's astonishing. Sensei, domo arigatou gozaimasu.
So I'm back here at the big pile of rocks, Washington, D.C. Spent the weekend in the Arctic, Iowa, with Howard Clark. He was a pretty interesting fellow, wasn't he? And this is what I've come home with. I'm actually fairly impressed with myself. I made this. And then finally put an edge on it. That super sharp, keen cutting edge. And we're gonna get that beautiful, bright, shiny, you can do that little mirror thing and flash the sunlight into my opponent's eyes, blind him. Yeah! Going for the kill? Well, we'll let Mike handle that part.
The sword still has to be polished, but just as important, I need a handguard. I mean, I've got to have something around here somewhere.
We'll wander back here into the pit of despair. Too small. Thinking maybe a laminate. I think that might be big enough for guard. Looks big enough. Brass. Of course, I probably don't want to add too much weight to it. Maybe I better stick with metal. Oh, here we go. It's ready to go. That hole's too big. The question is, where do I get all of this junk? I have an idea. How cool would that be? I think that's the ticket right there. Ta-da! Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a winner. So, what we have here is an off-the-shelf pinion gear, as in rack and pinion, pitch 10. That's the number of teeth, which I'm gonna cut a wafer out of. Try and fabricate into a guard, so that when an opponent strikes my sword, and their sword slides down the length of mine, it doesn't keep going and take off my hand.
All right, now we got a problem. Come here, let me show you this.
This is an axe. It's made for chopping wood. not made for splitting wood, compared to this splitting maul. You'll notice there is a significantly different geometry. Split firewood. Very sharp, cuts very nicely. Not so sharp, but it can do a heck of a lot of damage. Big, thick, fat body of metal behind the cutting edge. I don't think I've ever sharpened this thing. Kind of dull. Relatively keen, but not a lot of body of metal behind it. I gotta sharpen this thing all the time. Right now, that's the shape we have. Basically. Like that. Now the question is do I keep right on grinding on that same bevel down to a sharp razor edge? I could do that. The problem with that is that this section right here is going to be very, 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 very thin. There's not going to be a lot of material there supporting that final keen edge. Or do I make it like a chisel? Well, what they do is you've got a much steeper bevel angle right at the cutting edge.
It's time to decide. What am I building here? A battle axe or a razor blade? And I'm about to cross the divide. Because remember, I'm grinding here, and once I remove that metal, there ain't no putting it back.
Shot! Hey, Mike. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How was your
Good
trip?
to see you. It was astonishing.
Des Moines was amazingly cold, but I'm pretty happy with what I did.
Well, I think you may also have produced a beautiful, well, nearly finished.
We're getting there. I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, well, time's ticking.
Tomorrow, I got a lot of work to do.
And once again, I've mismanaged my time right down to the wire, and I've only got tonight to put a polish on this thing and make an attempt to put an edge on it.
I've set up a bit of a test course for Chad's katana. This is the most precision weapon we've worked on, and so we need some precision trials for Chad to see just how good he really is. Okay, Chad, are you ready for this?
Well, a little sleep deprived maybe, but yeah, I'm ready. Bring it on.
I want to see what you've done. I've been excited about this.
Careful, I did actually have time to get an edge on there.
Yes, you did.
I haven't got the polish up anywhere near where I want it yet.
No, and that's important, isn't it? When you imagine running your hand over a mirror or over a rough
the
surface,
friction,
there's drag. But it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's utilitarian.
I think it'll cut the mustard.
To test the blades, we've brought in James Williams, the foremost samurai swordsman in America.
Well, this is the sword that Chad made. I'd like you to tell me what you think.
Has a nice curve to it.
Presumably it's to give more of a slicing cut.
Yes.
Is it going to do the job, do you think?
I think we can make this cut.
First, we're going to test the primary purpose of the sword, the cut.
Confident?
Yes, highly.
The best test of the blade for sharpness and precision. Test 1, the mat.
James, in your own time.
Moment of truth.
Yes!
Hey!
Hey! I think it's not over yet. Not over yet.
Now James will take a swing with the traditionally made sword.
Wow. It certainly severed it. Equally smooth. There's nothing between them. And from your point of view, James?
Cleaner cut with the sharper sword. A little easier to do.
It was easier to do.
But certainly both accomplished the task.
Can I give it a whack?
Hey, good shot.
Now we're going to double the challenge, upping the thickness of the mat from 4 inches to 8. This is going to take a sharp blade. First, Chad's sword.
Come on, baby. Come on. That's pretty good. That is but a thread. It's close. You're 8 layers short.
Yeah.
Well, game on.
Now, time for James Williams to try to cut 8 inches with his traditional sword.
Yeah. Pretty clean.
It's pretty clean.
But it wasn't all soft targets. When used in battle, the samurai sword came up against iron armor. First, let's see how the traditional sword holds up with a strike against Test 2, the warrior.
Look at that. That is... You have defeated that defense. It's completely severed these cords. It's enabled the sword to smash right through there.
Yeah, but I don't think it went through, Mike, because there's no cuts on the cloth on his neck.
All these cords here have been severed.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got through that defense, and the blows landed right here. That's killing territory.
So he's dead?
I would think so. What about the sword? Is that dead or alive?
Put a fork in it.
The sword has a couple of nicks in it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
That's quite a serious nick. Well, I think we need to try your sword, Chad.
All right.
Against this.
Bring it on.
Now, Chad's sword takes a crack at it.
That looked like a pretty powerful blow. What's it done? This is completely caved in. The armor's clearly done a fairly good job here. He's absorbed all that blow, but he's left it. Now, any second strike there is damaging.
Look at that. There's no edge damage to that at all.
You are absolutely right, my friend.
I'm not sure it's the sharpest, but yeah, it's resilient.
Try the helmet. Look into the light. Try the helmet.
We have a dead man. So we have a result here. Now what's
Yes,
it?
we do.
Look at that. That has bitten deep into that. I mean, these helmets are designed to deflect blows, to create glancing blows.
Yeah, that would have
Made
hurt.
him, it's undoubtedly made him unconscious, if not killed him.
It's probably worse than a red wine hangover.
But what's happening with the thrust? There's where it went.
Here you have penetrated the armor and
Created that thump that's potentially knocked the man over, or at least destabilized him. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to test the swords by shooting this bullet at them from this gun, which will send them at 850 feet per second. Now, the only way we're going to be able to see what happens is by using this high-speed camera.
our normal camera records at 30 frames a second. But the high-speed camera records at a massive 33,000 frames per second. And the Japanese sword is ready to go.
Ready, gentlemen? Okay, taking up the tension, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shall we go and have a look? You can see where the angle of the blade has sent the bullet out at this angle here, and we see it's punched a hole through this reflector.
Well, it is still in one piece. Let's go take a closer look.
There it goes.
Boom. See it change angle slightly?
But there was hardly any judder on that either. There was virtually no resistance.
Okay, Chad, you're on.
Okay, here we go. Taking up the... This is your baby in here. In fact, you should probably have the honor.
Mike. That's so sweet.
It is, isn't it?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Ho-ho!
And there's quite a tear in that's definitely a second.
Yeah.
I think we should just have a look at them in comparison. So if we unclamp this one, now you can see the difference there, where we've got, this is the Chad sword, we've got the long mark there.
Because Chad's sword doesn't have such a high polish, it's created more friction as it's sliced the bullet, and that's left traces of lead on the blade. Come on, Chad. You're going to miss it. And look at that blade. Huge oscillation. That wasn't happening on yours.
Right.
The bullet's creating more drag.
Yes.
That's actually
You know,
making the
that's
blade-
actually pretty much the clearest demonstration you can get of the reason for having that soft core on the back.
What was really important is the cutting test, because that's what the sword is for. That's its function. But this has really showed us, with that oscillation, it's really showed us that
That is the essence.
The essence of the sword,
Samurai sword.
that it has that resilience.
The ability to absorb that kaboom, that initial punch. If that was a razor blade, it would have just
shattered.
gone.
So, valid test. Job well done. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, apart from the polish, I'm very proud of it. And, you know, there's hardly any damage at all, despite all the punishment we put it through. I think I'll keep it. I'm in the mood for a fruit cocktail.
One more step.